Broken heart-opening emotional hook. Imagine working day and night saving every coin for your dream, only to wake up and find it gone. Taken not by thieves, but by the very parents who were supposed to protect you. That's the betrayal 20-year-old Amara Chisomo faced. They stole her future to fund her sister's luxury trip. But what they didn't know was that Amara had something much greater planned. Something that would change the entire family's destiny. Amara Chisomo was only 20 years old, but her spirit carried the weight of someone who had fought many silent battles. She lived in Lilongwe, Malawi, where life was not easy for a student like her. By day, she sat through long university lectures, her eyes heavy from the lack of sleep. By evening, while others laughed with friends or relaxed, Amara rushed to her first job at a small grocery store, where she stacked shelves until her arms ached. At night, she cleaned offices, moving from desk to desk with tired hands but determined eyes. Every coin she earned, no matter how small, was carefully counted and treasured. Her friends often wondered why Amara worked so hard when her parents seemed comfortable enough. But Amara carried a secret dream close to her chest, one that kept her awake through the exhaustion. She wanted to build something of her own, a fashion business born from her love for design. From the time she was a little girl, she would cut pieces of old fabric into shapes, trying to turn them into dresses for her dolls. That childhood passion had grown into a vision of owning a boutique where women could feel powerful and beautiful in clothing that told their stories. Every time she was paid, she would hurry home and slip the notes into a small metal box hidden beneath her bed. That box was her heart's treasure, a symbol of her future. She never told anyone how much she had saved, not even her closest friend, because she feared the world might laugh at her dream or try to take it away. On lonely nights, she would unlock the box, run her fingers over the bundles of notes, and whisper to herself, "One day this will be the beginning." Though her clothes were simple and her shoes worn from long walks across the city, Amara carried herself with quiet dignity. She didn't envy her classmates who dressed in imported brands or spent freely on luxuries. Deep inside, she believed her time would come. For now, her silence was her strength, and her hidden box was her shield. Amara was a dreamer, yes, but she was also a builder of her own destiny, brick by brick, coin by coin, in a world that had no idea what she was preparing for. Amara came home late that evening, her body aching after another long shift. All she wanted was to collapse on her bed, close her eyes, and dream of the future she was building coin by coin. But the moment she pushed open the door to her small room, her world stopped. Clothes were scattered on the floor, her drawers half open, and the air felt heavy, as if someone had ripped through her most private space. Her hands trembled as she dropped her bag and fell to her knees, pulling things aside in panic. The metal box, the one that held years of her sacrifice, was gone. Her chest tightened, her breath growing sharp. She pulled open every drawer again, lifted her mattress, searched under the bed, but the truth screamed louder with every second. It was gone. Her savings, her dream, her lifeline, it had vanished. Tears welled in her eyes, but before she could even process the pain, she heard laughter drifting from the living room. She wiped her face and stepped out, her legs weak. There, sitting proudly, was her younger sister Ruto, twirling in a sparkling new dress Amara had never seen before. Gold bangles clinked on her wrists, and beside her lay shopping bags spilling with clothes and shoes. Ruto's eyes glittered as she leaned toward a friend on the phone, whispering excitedly, "I can't wait for Dubai. It's going to be the trip of a lifetime." Amara froze, her heart sinking deeper than before. The words hit her like a slap. Dubai. Dresses. Jewelry. She didn't need anyone to explain. Her savings had been stolen to fund her sister's luxury trip. Her gaze darted to her parents, who sat quietly on the couch. Her father's eyes were fixed on the television, his jaw tight. Her mother busied herself with folding laundry that didn't need folding. Neither of them dared to meet Amara's eyes. That silence was louder than any confession. They had known. They had taken what wasn't theirs, given it to Ruto, and now sat in the comfort of their choice while Amara stood broken. Her throat tightened as if it held a scream she couldn't release. She turned back toward her room, her heart bleeding, her trust shattered. In that moment, she realized betrayal didn't always come from strangers. It could sit right across the table, wearing the face of family. Amara stood in the middle of the room, her fists trembling at her sides, her voice barely steady. "Where is my money?" she demanded, her eyes fixed on her parents. Her mother finally looked up, irritation flashing across her face rather than guilt. "You're young," her mother snapped, her tone sharp and dismissive, as if Amara were a child whining about sweets. "You will save again. But Ruto? She deserves this chance. Do you want to stand in the way of your sister's future?" Amara's breath caught in her throat. The words cut deeper than a knife. Her future had been stolen in silence, yet her pain was brushed aside as if it were nothing. She turned to her father, searching his face for some hint of understanding, for the father who once told her that honesty and hard work mattered. But his eyes were cold, his voice even colder. "Family sacrifices," he said firmly, "are not yours to question. What is yours is ours, and what is ours will always serve the family." Amara felt her knees weaken. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "You didn't ask, you stole." The word stole echoed in the room like thunder, but her parents did not flinch. Instead, her mother rolled her eyes and Ruto smirked, swinging her shiny new handbag across her shoulder as though Amara's broken dreams were a joke. Her heart pounded in her chest, anger and hurt colliding until it was hard to breathe. How could the very people who were meant to protect her betray her so shamelessly? She had scrubbed floors, stayed up late finishing assignments after long shifts, endured hunger just to save for her future. And in one night they had taken it all, not with regret but with pride. Tears blurred her vision, but she refused to let them fall in front of them. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay upright, though inside she was collapsing. The trust she had built in her family, piece by piece, sacrifice by sacrifice, lay shattered at her feet. In that moment, Amara realized something she never wanted to believe. Her parents did not see her dreams. They only saw her as a resource, a tool to lift others while leaving her empty. And that night, standing in the home she thought was her safe place, Amara knew she was truly on her own. Amara closed the door to her small room and leaned against it, her chest rising and falling as though she had run for miles. She wanted to scream, to break something, to cry until her body was empty, but she knew none of it would matter. Outside that door, her parents had already dismissed her pain, and her sister was probably parading her new clothes in front of the mirror. To them, the matter was finished. To them, Amara's dreams had been nothing more than a box of money under a bed. She sat at her desk, her hands shaking as she pulled her old leather-bound journal closer. For a moment she stared at the blank page, her vision blurring with unshed tears. Then she picked up her pen and began to write, the words pouring out like fire she could no longer keep inside. "They believe they've taken my future," she scribbled, pressing the pen so hard it nearly tore through the paper. "They don't know. I'm about to build one they'll never touch." Her handwriting was messy, rushed, but every line carried her pain, her betrayal and her new determination. She underlined the last sentence 3 times, as if carving the promise into her very soul. She read it aloud in a whisper, her voice trembling but growing stronger with each word, like a flame flickering into a steady blaze. Amara closed the journal and placed her palm on it as though sealing a pact with herself. Her silence was not weakness, it was her armor. Her parents thought they had broken her spirit by taking what she had saved, but they had only woken a side of her they had never seen before. The side that would no longer wait for their approval. The side that would no longer beg for their understanding. She lay down on her bed, staring at the ceiling in the dim light, her fists clenched at her sides. Outside, laughter drifted through the walls, the sound of Ruto bragging about her upcoming trip. It stabbed at her heart, but she did not move. She would not confront them again. She would not waste another word on ears that refused to listen. Her silence hit a storm, one that would soon break in ways none of them expected. And when it did, they would finally understand that the girl they had underestimated was the woman who would rise without them. Late at night, when the rest of the house was silent, Amara lit a small lamp and pulled out scraps of fabric she had gathered from the trash pile behind a local tailor's shop. The pieces were too small for anyone else to use, but to her, they were treasures waiting for life. She smoothed them out, sketching patterns on old paper with a pencil she had sharpened down to a stub. With each line she drew, she felt a little more free, a little more in control of a future her parents thought they had stolen from her. At first, it looked like a child's game, stitching odd fabrics together with shaky hands. But Amara was determined. Night after night, her fingers bled from the needle, and her eyes burned from staying awake too long, yet she refused to stop. Her small bedroom became her secret workshop. The hum of her sewing, though faint, was the sound of rebellion, the sound of a girl who refused to be broken. What started as a way to calm her pain slowly turned into something greater. Her sketches became sharper, her stitches stronger. She experimented with bold colors, daring cuts, and unique styles that no one had ever seen in her village. Each piece she made was more than just clothing. It was a statement, a whispered promise that her future would not be defined by anyone else's choices. Sometimes she would stand in front of the mirror and hold up her creations against herself, imagining a life where people admired her work, where her designs walked on stages instead of being hidden in a dark room. The thought filled her with fire. She couldn't scream at her parents, but she could sew. She couldn't take back her stolen savings, but she could create beauty out of rags. The scraps in her hands became symbols of her life, discarded, unwanted, and overlooked. Yet, just like her, they held potential no one else cared to see. Stitch by stitch, Amara was not just making clothes. She was rebuilding her spirit, turning silence into strength and pain into power. What began as a hobby was no longer a pastime. It was her quiet revenge, her secret path to freedom. Would you like me to continue building the next outline section in the same powerful style so each part flows like a full viral story? Amara's hands trembled as she carried a small bag filled with the dresses she had stitched in secret. The campus fair buzzed with students, vendors, and music. But to her it felt like walking into a storm. She had never shown her work to anyone outside her room, and now strangers would see the uneven seams, the bold colors, the risks she had dared to take. She found a small corner table, laid out her dresses, and stood quietly, praying anyone would stop and look. At first, people passed by without a glance. Some admired the brighter, factory-made clothes at nearby stalls. Doubt crawled into her chest, whispering that she didn't belong there. Just as she was about to pack up, a tall woman in a crisp blazer paused. Her eyes were sharp, scanning every detail. Amara's heart raced. The woman lifted one of the dresses, holding it against the light. "This is different," the woman murmured, running her fingers over the stitching. "Who made this?" Amara swallowed hard. I did." The woman smiled slightly. "I'm Linda Banda. I own a boutique in town. And this," she lifted the dress higher, "is something special." Amara could barely breathe as Linda looked through all the pieces. She expected criticism, maybe a polite rejection. Instead, Linda set 3 dresses aside. "I'll take these. Right now." "How much?" It felt unreal. The dresses she had stitched from scraps, the designs she had doubted, were being bought, not out of pity, but because someone truly saw their value. Her lips parted, but no words came. Linda gently added, "Don't undersell yourself, my dear. Talent like this deserves recognition." The money pressed into her hand that day wasn't just payment, it was proof. Proof that her secret nights had not been wasted. Proof that she wasn't foolish for dreaming. As Linda walked away with her dresses, Amara stood frozen, a rush of pride and disbelief flooding her. For the first time, her future didn't feel stolen, felt possible. That night, she didn't just sew. She created with fire in her soul. Someone had finally seen her, and from that moment on, nothing could stop her. Do you want me to expand the next section in the same viral, flowing style so the whole story reads like one emotional video script? Weeks turned into months, and Amara's nights no longer ended with tears. Instead, they were filled with the hum of her sewing machine and the glow of new dreams taking shape. After that first encounter, Linda didn't just buy dresses. She returned with advice, encouragement, and an offer Amara never expected. "Let me mentor you," she said warmly. And she meant it. Linda taught her how to price her work, how to photograph her designs, and how to use social media to reach buyers far beyond her campus. At first, Amara was hesitant. She had no fancy camera, no professional setup. But with her phone and determination, she began posting pictures of her dresses. What happened next shocked her. Orders trickled in at first, then doubled, then exploded. Women from Lilongwe wanted her bold prints for weddings, graduates wanted her fitted gowns, and soon messages came from places she had never even visited. Can you ship to South Africa? Do you take international orders? Her small metal box that once held her savings now overflowed with receipts, payments, and notes of gratitude from happy customers. Each order felt like a victory, each new design a step further from the night her dreams had been stolen. Meanwhile at home, her parents still carried on as if nothing had changed. They whispered proudly about Ruto's flashy life and her trips abroad, never once asking how Amara managed her studies or what kept her awake so late. They thought she was still struggling, barely holding herself together. They never imagined their quiet daughter was building a name that echoed across Malawi and beyond. What made it sweeter was that Amara no longer felt the sting of their dismissal. Every new customer, every repost of her work online, every encouraging word from Lindau reminded her that she was no longer invisible. Her designs were speaking louder than her pain ever could. One evening, as she watched the order count climb on her online store, Amara whispered to herself, "They thought they buried me. But all along I was a seed." And with every passing day, that seed grew into something unstoppable, something the whole world was beginning to notice. Do you want me to keep writing the next section in the same flowing viral style so the full story stays seamless? A year later, the girl who once cried alone in her room was now standing in front of glittering lights, wearing confidence like a crown. The invitation had come weeks earlier. Amara had been chosen to showcase her designs at one of Malawi's most prestigious fashion galas. She had rehearsed in her tiny room, folded and refolded her sketches, and prayed her dresses would speak louder than her fears. Now the night had arrived. Her family walked into the grand hall with little expectation. To them, Amara was still the quiet dreamer, the girl who barely scraped through life while Ruto shone brighter with her expensive trips and designer labels. They smiled politely at the guests, whispering, "We're just here to support," never imagining what was about to unfold. The lights dimmed. The announcer's voice carried across the room. And now, presenting the work of this year's rising star, Amara Chisomo. Gasps spread through the crowd as her name filled the air. Her parents froze. Ruto's eyes widened in disbelief. Could it really be her? Then the runway lit up. Models stepped out one by one, dressed in Amara's creations. Bold prints, flowing fabrics, and delicate stitches told stories of resilience and roots. Every piece carried her pain, her struggle, and her unshakable hope. The audience leaned forward, captivated. Whispers rose, then applause thundered. Some stood to clap, unable to hold back their admiration. Her mother gripped her father's arm, speechless. Ruto, once so proud of her foreign labels, now sat in stunned silence as the crowd roared for the sister she had betrayed. Every clap echoed the truth they had tried to bury. Amara had risen, and nothing could hide her light. When the final model walked, the spotlight turned to Amara herself. She stepped onto the stage, her dress a masterpiece of her own design. Her head was high, her smile steady, her heart unshaken. "Designer of the Year," the host declared, and the hall erupted in cheers. Her family's faces told the story, shock, shame, and awe blending into silence. The same girl they had dismissed was now the name on everyone's lips. Amara didn't need revenge. Her success was enough. Would you like me to continue with the same detailed viral style for number 9? The turning point? When the lights dimmed and the applause finally settled, Amara walked off the stage with her heart steady, her smile calm. She had faced the world and won, but the night was not yet over. As she stood near the exit, greeting reporters and well-wishers, she noticed her parents and sister slowly making their way toward her. Their steps were hesitant, their faces heavy with shame. The same people who once told her she was too young, too weak, too powerless, now looked at her as though she had become someone they no longer recognized. Her mother was the first to speak, her voice trembling. "Amara, we didn't know. We didn't realize what you were capable of." Her father, usually stern and unshaken, shifted uncomfortably before muttering, "We made mistakes. Forgive us, child." Even Ruto, who had once flaunted luxury bought with Amara's stolen savings, stood behind them, unable to meet her sister's eyes. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Everyone around them seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what Amara would say. Cameras clicked, journalists leaned closer, and whispers rippled through the crowd. This was not just a family matter anymore. It had become a public reckoning. Amara didn't raise her voice. She didn't let anger spill. Instead, she looked at them with calm strength and said, "You stole my savings, but you could not steal my determination. I built all this without your blessing." Her words were simple, but they cut deeper than any shout could have. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, her father lowered his head, and Ruto's lips quivered. Around them, people began to nod, some even clapping softly, not for the fashion show this time, but for the courage in Amara's truth. The power that once belonged to her parents, the control they had held over her life, was gone. In that single moment, it shifted entirely into Amara's hands. She didn't need their approval anymore. She didn't need their excuses. She had already won. Not just on the runway, but in proving that dignity and resilience could rise from betrayal. For the first time, her parents stood small before her, and Amara stood tall, not out of pride, but out of the strength she had earned on her own. Do you want me to now continue this same viral, detailed style for number 10? The New Dawn? The morning sun poured through the tall glass windows of a new building in Lilongwe, its fresh paint shining proudly. On the wall outside hung a sign in bold letters, "The Amara Foundation for Girls." Inside, laughter echoed as young girls filled the hall. Some orphans, some students, others carrying scars of betrayal just like Amara once had. Each of them had a story of being denied, overlooked, or robbed of their chance at a future. But today they were standing on new ground, a place built for them, by someone who understood their pain. Amara walked through the crowd, no longer the timid girl who once hid her savings in a small metal box under her bed. Her steps were confident, her eyes bright with hope. She stopped to watch a group of girls sketching dresses, their pencils racing across the paper the way her own once had. Another group was learning how to sew, their laughter filling the air as needles and threads brought their dreams to life. Reporters and community leaders had gathered too, their cameras capturing every moment. A journalist asked her to say a few words for the crowd. Amara stood in front of the microphone, her heart steady. The faces of the girls looked up at her with admiration, and behind them, her parents stood quietly in the back, humbled, watching the daughter they had once underestimated now create something far greater than herself. She smiled, her voice calm but firm. "They thought silence was weakness. They were wrong. Silence was my power. In the quiet I dreamed. In the quiet I built. And in the quiet I rose." Her words rippled through the room like music, and the applause that followed shook the walls. As the celebration continued, Amara stepped outside into the sunlight. She lifted her head high, feeling the warmth on her skin. This was not just her victory. It was a new dawn for every girl who had ever been told she wasn't enough. What her parents had tried to take away had only pushed her closer to her destiny. She had turned betrayal into a legacy, and now her silence had given birth to a voice for many. Would you like me to now compile all 10 parts, fully expand it into one smooth flowing complete viral script, around 4,000 words, for this story?